what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
And here we go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into episode, 13 of Arkansas Preps Weekly. You got a little bling bling there from the Cabo baseball guru there. I don't have any of that. I never won any championships really other than conferences. And you don't get rings for that. Actually, I think today you get rings if you win a division championship, or even if you win at least have a winning season in a lot of cases. But not always been that way.
We got to watch when we finish runner-up in 98. It was you go 30-1 and win your conference and win 30 straight games, and you get a watch.
I think I'm all right with that overall because, I mean, if you got one blemish and it's in the last game of the year for the biggest prize, then I can't really blame for that. But definitely a perfect time for Kevin to be wearing his bling-bling. And speaking of, that is Kevin Bohannon to, I guess, your probably left. I better not mess with those graphics because I think they're still screwed up. We got to fix that. But my name's Kyle Sutherland, alongside the baseball guru himself, Kevin Bohannon, and it is the end of the 2024 spring sports season, or I guess we close that out in Conway over the weekend with the Weekend of Champions. We crowned some soccer state champions, baseball, and softball, and we're going to talk about all 6 of those state finals games. I want to remind everybody, though, if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and you can also subscribe on all the audio forums as well, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you find your podcast. We are there. So, Kevin, I know you called, just about all of them, maybe 4 or so this week. 4. Yeah, so you got to do the Valley View and Maumelle. That was on Sunday, as Kyle Deckelbaum, I think, mentioned it perfectly, that game had so much hype that it needed its own day. Mother Nature decided that. So another great weekend put on by the Arkansas Activities Association. I really appreciate everybody at the University of Central Arkansas for all they did for us. It was another fun weekend, but these temperatures are starting to warm up.
Definitely, and you felt it yesterday in Conway with 90-degree heat. It was over 100 degrees on that turf. Maumelle came out wearing their all black just like they had Thursday night or Friday night. They just wanted to go with the same thing that they had, but a great weekend all around. Everything went according to plan except for Class 2A. A great performance by Hayden Thornton's Ouachita Warriors, and that's what happens in a one-game setting. You get a pitcher like Trey Cox who throws a complete game and only gives up a couple of hits, and next thing you know, you're winning your third state title in school history and knocking off a Woodlawn team that was 34-1 coming into it. So a lot of fun. Very fortunate to get to call 4 state title games with Kyle Deckelbaum, JB Brazil. So, appreciate Bobby Swafford for inviting me to do that for a second straight year. Softball was great. You, Bobby, and of course, Sydney Parlee and Dorian Kraft on the call. So I know there was a lot of excitement this weekend. We had extra inning games for softball. And didn't have any run rules. We only had one team that scored in double digits in baseball, and that was Class 1A Taylor.
We actually did have a couple run rules. Actually, we had some bookend run rules because Taylor did it in the opening game on Thursday, and then Hackett did it to Lincoln to finish up on Saturday. But we did have a few. Had a couple of blowouts like you would expect, but we did have some really good ones. And of course, Jared and I talk about that on episode 14. But before we get started with 6A, I want to tell you guys about Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, because a properly graded infield is not only important for player safety, but also the field's health. No company in the state can match the exceptional service and dedication like our friends at Athletic Field Service of Arkansas in Sherwood. From infield renovation, lip removal and edging, mound rehab, laser leveling, and much more, Jeremy Rice and his crew have you covered. Call Jeremy at 501-416-1218. That's 501-416-1218 for your free evaluation and consultation. And you can check them out on Facebook or see what else they have to offer online by searching Athletic Field Service of Arkansas. Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, we got the dirt on your infield. Starting in Class 6A, Harbor wins back-to-back state championships, a 2-0 win over Rogers, a team they are very familiar with. And Kevin, I guess everybody knows by now, Luke Cornelison had the most interesting stat line, or at least one of them of all time, a no-hitter, but 14 walks.
Yeah, and that 14 walks as a team. 14 walks.
That's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Cornelison went 3 2/3 innings. University of Arkansas Razorback commit for the 2025 class. He earned MVP honors. And for our listeners, viewers out there, the MVP in baseball and softball is handed out to the most outstanding player for the state tournament. It's not just the finals. So, but a lot of those situations, the best player in the championship game has had 2 or 3 really good games before that. So you could see right there that, Cornelison, his fastball slider combo was just too much. He worked out of jams. Rogers left 9 runners on base through the first 4 innings. And credit to Gavin Moore. If there was a championship game MVP, you'd have to give it to Gavin Moore. He came in, finished off the no-hitter, 3 1/3 innings, only walked 2, struck out 5. Just an outstanding performance. Not a lot of offense, as we know. Jake Taylor for Rogers went the distance, the sophomore. Pitched 6 innings in the semifinal against Bryant. If Rogers would have won that game, Jake Taylor would have been the MVP. He pitched at an MVP level in the title game. Scattered 5 hits, 2 runs. The first one came on Ross Felder, single to right field. Harbor did a great job staying inside the baseball, driving the ball opposite field for those right-handed hitters. But Taylor just attacked the zone, and then they had a walk that brought in the second run, and that was all the offense that was needed for Cornelison and Moore. So a great game. Harbor, of course, gets to 30 wins. They're 30-5 now in the season, 2 straight state titles for Coach Dustin Helmkamp. In their third in school history, they're third since 2018. Of course, that school's only been around since 2006. Great program. Expect them to compete. Look, they had 9 college signees that suited up for them on Thursday. They're going to have, or Friday, they're going to have 2 more next year with Cornelison and Luke Altum that's already committed to University of Arkansas Rich Mountain. So they'll have to do a little bit of reloading. I expect Rogers to be back in it next year because they'll have Taylor and a lot of guys back next year. But kudos to Coach Matt Melson, the Rogers Mounties, on a great season, 27-4. They've been one of the most consistent teams in Class 6A the last 5-6 years. They've won 5 straight conference titles. But end of the day, Harbor Wildcats are your 2024 state champions.
Speaking of next year, we'll do a quick way too early for each of these classes, just since we're finishing up the season. And you got to expect, you just mentioned that Harbor and Rogers, you expect to be right back in the mix. Do you expect it to be another year of heavy West teams in 2025, or does maybe a Bryant, Cabot step in there?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be heavy West. And remember, Kyle, this year we had 2 Central teams and 2 West teams in the semifinals. So it wasn't completely dominated by the West as it appeared to be, because throughout the whole year we had top 4 were the whole teams were from the West, except for Cabot snuck in there. Bryant snuck in there a couple times. Look, Bryant's going to be good. They lose Gideon Moats. They lose a couple other key pieces. But they do have Ridge Sutherland back. And Garrett Bach is just going to keep continuing to build that program, and they're going to keep getting better. I'll tell you, the team to watch out for, it's going to be Conway. With Sean, they have 3 sophomores that made All-State or just had tremendous years. Left-handed pitcher Owen Davenport on the mound, Max Holland behind the plate. Then you got Sean Cover, who hit over 400 as a freshman last year, made All-State again this season. So Leighton Harden, they're going to be good. Cabot, they'll return Cale Turner next year. They've got some pieces they need to replace. They were without senior Aiden Velasquez over the last month of the season. So you kind of got a preview of what's going to happen next year. Looking at Fayetteville, they got Delamar and Schaefer back. Charlie Graves will be back next year as well. So a lot of the same teams will be at the top next year. Catholic will take a step back. They'll have Caleb Short back. Asher Hamilton, they lose Brooks Ward, Joe Castillo. They lose a good nucleus for that team that made a run this year and took Rogers to the brink 4-3 in the quarterfinals. So a lot of the same teams, but maybe a different order going into 2025.
Then down in Class 5A, Valley View completes the job this year after 2 heartbreaking years heading back to Northeast Arkansas. They really just dominated Maumelle for the most part. Now, Maumelle did have a chance to threaten. I think it was at the top of the 5th when they loaded the bases. But really, other than that, Kevin, I think that we just saw another example. I know you went on record after the game and said this is the best team in 25 years. I think probably a lot of people would agree with that, and they just showed that again against Maumelle to win their second state title since, what was that, 2021, after 4 years consecutive of being there.
Yeah, and think about this. Since 2018, they've been to the semifinals every year. And, of course, since 2021, they've been to the finals, winning 2 of those. The way that they've done that, that's 6 years, discounting 2020 because of COVID. So they've made the finals 4 times, 2 times in 5A, 2 times in 4A. They've made the semifinals 3 times in each. So 2018, 2019, they made the semifinals in 5A and 4A. 2020 was a blank, of course. And then we know what they've done since 2021. So, yeah, I went on record and said that. And I say of the last 25 years, and they're the best team in the 21st century because and this is really hard to go back and compare teams from different eras. I mean, just think about it. And I compared Valley View this year to, I played on one of the best teams in Arkansas State history. And we were 33-4 my senior year at Mills, ranked nationally. I think we finished ranked 11th in the nation that year. We were high as number 5. And it was a different era. We had 4 guys that had double-digit home runs. Now, bats were a little livelier back then, but the game has changed a lot. Valley View's pitching staff was better than our Mills staff back then. I'll concede that, no doubt. We had a deeper hitting squad. So, I mean, like I said, 4 guys with double-digit home runs, and the teams just hit a lot better back then. This weekend, I did not see a lot of good hitters at the plate. I mean, that's just the way it was. There's a lot of emphasis being placed on launch angle and getting the ball lifted and putting backspin on the ball. And we didn't have a single home run this weekend. I think we had 1 ball that might have one-hopped the wall, and that was Braden Jones for Woodlawn, and it got caught right at the wall. So, you didn't see any balls leave the yard this weekend. But the X factor, and Josh Allison said this, was Slade Caldwell. Look, Slade did not have a hit in the state championship game, but he had 3 walks, a stolen base, scored their first 2 runs, and he affected the game. Lance Davis was like, outside of that 1 inning, was spectacular. He gave up 2 hits, walked 2, and struck out 6 over 6 innings. So the University of Arkansas signee, look, he said it in that post-game interview, they made the finals at Jonesboro with him as a freshman, and it was good for him to get back to pitching that game and win. Eli Crasilius, who had started the last 2 championship games for Valley View, came on in the 7th inning to get the final 3 outs. So it was a coronation, man. This whole year has been a march towards infamy, so to speak. They only lost 2 games. They lost 2 games to out-of-state teams, and this was expected from the get-go. It was expected last year. Little Rock Christian upset them, but this year you really knew something was going to have to happen for this team not to win it all. We were talking at the beginning of the season, Kyle, could they go undefeated? And I said, look, I don't think anybody in Arkansas will beat them. It can happen because it's baseball, but they have a chance to. So 31-2. They'll go down as the best team in the 21st century, the last 25 years. I don't see another team in the state of Arkansas that can compete with their depth. Look at this, Kyle. Noah Ragsdale, their second baseman and 8-hole hitter, had a double and a triple and 2 RBIs on the day.
Yeah, 2 for 3. I was going to point that out, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at what Drew Gartman did out of the 5-hole, knocked in their last run. Owen Roach, this team is just so deep. They're bangers. Hudson Hossman. Dax Webb did have an RBI. He grounded out and got the first run of the game in. So their big boppers didn't do much, but they didn't have to. And Noah Ragsdale said, look, we only needed to get 1 run. We knew with our pitching staff, that was their 13th shutout of the year and 31 wins. So they shut out almost half the teams they played en route to getting that title. So congratulations. It was fun to watch, fun to call. They brought me, and I wasn't originally scheduled to call that game. It was just going to be Kyle and JB. And I was very fortunate they asked me to come back and call that one because it was a lot of fun and it was worthy of it. The stands were packed, crowd was electric, and it lived up to the billing.
So Slade is going to obviously get drafted sometime next month. And what is obviously Valley View is going to be back there every single year. But what do you see 2025 looking like in Class 5A?
Yeah, you think back, Maumelle, they'll have Peyton Lee back. They'll have Blaze Ward. They'll have Chandler Eubanks. So they'll be in the discussion. The Sylvan Hills, I could see maybe they lost. I found out yesterday they lost Landon Carter, Razorback commit to a prep school in South Carolina. So they're going to take a little step back. Benton's going to be in the mix. Lake Hamilton will lose quite a few. Losing Easton Hurley is going to be big for them. They had 4 seniors that were really the core of that semifinal run. Van Buren is going to be back, and they're going to be good for the next couple of years. They had sophomore in Weston Wilcox, and they had another freshman that was 7-2 on the season, pitched in some big games, conference games. So it wouldn't surprise me. Van Buren, Benton getting in the mix next year. Valley View, of course, with everything, they're going to lose a lot, but they're going to reload. There's some guys that you haven't even heard of that will be college baseball players that will be on the field for Valley View in the next couple of years. Going to the West, Greenbrier, they lose a couple of guys, a couple of good arms. The South, we talked about Lake Hamilton, Benton, just the Central. It will be about the same. Little Rock Christian, they'll reload. They're going to lose Tate Collins, Cade Bowman, Jackson Kircher. But they've got some good guys in the pipeline, especially some ninth graders and even eighth graders that will be freshmen next year that could play a big role for the Warriors in the next 2 or 3 years.
And then in Class 4A, the Prairie Grove Tigers, they take home their first state title. They put a 4 spot up on Robinson in the 6th inning. And I know that, Kevin, you've mentioned many times that Robinson's best times are ahead of them, more than likely, probably a year ahead of schedule, kind of like Harbor softball was in Class 6A. Got there much sooner than expected. So I know that it wasn't the outcome Robinson wanted, and congrats to Prairie Grove certainly for taking home their first state title. But I think probably a lot of eyes need to stay on Robinson as well. Absolutely,
and congratulations to fellow El Dorado alum Mitch Cameron, graduated from El Dorado. It's a really cool story, Kyle. He was at Prairie Grove previously up until 2015. He got hired at Rogers Heritage and came back to Prairie Grove in 2019. So from that span of 2010 through 2015, they won like 3 regional titles, made the state championship game in 2011, and they were right there knocking on the door. They could never bust it down. So they came back this year. It was kind of weird how they did it. They went 5-2 in conference play. Boonville beat them 18-4 in a regular season game. And that was, just manhandled them. It just beat them up and down the baseball field. So this was a team that went 21-9-1 on the season. Not the best record by any stretch of the imagination, but they were scrappy, man. Connor Hubbs, pitcher, left-handed pitcher, and he hit over 400 on the year, over 40 RBIs. He ended up 9-3 on the season. He was the state championship winning pitcher. But Tristan Hall delivered the big hit in the bottom of the 6th inning. They were down 2-1. Logan Eichler for Robinson had pitched a gem to that point. Just the sophomore for Robinson has a bright future in front of him. He walked the first guy, hit the second guy on an 0-2 count. So Coach Delaney turned to Spencer Watson, who threw in the win against Lone Oak, went 6 2/3 innings, shutting down Lone Oak. And Prairie Grove got to him. A couple of key hits. Tristan Hall, who had the big 2 RBI single in the semifinals against Farmington, delivered again in a big situation. But the most heads-up play of the weekend, it was 4-2, Kyle. And there had just been a hit to first base, and Hall was at third at that time. Watson was roaming on the back of the mound, had his back to Hall and his back to the plate. Hall noticed that and took off and scored, gave it the 5th run. That was that was the nail in the coffin right there. Yeah, coming back, scoring two runs would have been a stretch, but that 3rd run was really huge for that 3-run gap. Tigers win 5-2. But yeah, like you said, Robinson's going to be back. A lot of talent coming back, a lot of pitching coming back. Prairie Grove, they're always going to be in the fight. I think they're moving up to 5A next year, if I'm not mistaken. So
I think that's right. The conferences are going to come out. I talked to Steve Roberts from the AAA about it this week. They should come out in June.
So there's going to be a lot of movement, a lot of changes, especially with the private school, the equity factor coming into play. So 4A next year, you're going to have Harding Academy, you're going to have CAC. That's going to be something to deal with. Lone Oak is going to be a team that's without a head coach right now, but they're going to be a team to look out for. They're not going to be as dominant as they were the last 2 years, but they're going to be good. The West. The western part of the state, Shiloh Christian's always going to be in the mix. They had a lot of young guys
coming
this year. Do what now?
Because Coach Gum that's coming in?
Yeah, Coach Gum.
Coach
Gum. He takes over June 1st here in a couple of weeks. So, P. Ridge had a flare this year. Huntsville's going to have a new head coach. They hired Dylan Hurt that had been at UA Fort Smith previously and, grew up, played at Bryant. So a lot of baseball tradition right there that Hurt's bringing in. His dad, Darren Hurt, has been a coach, coached the Bryant Black Sox American Legion team, travel team. So 4A is going to be really competitive next year. I'm really excited about that classification. I know there's some people out there that say some 5A teams shouldn't be competing with 4A teams, but that's the way it is right now. I mean, honestly, you got teams that are competing, Nashville, Arkadelphia, Magnolia. Those teams from the South should be better next year. And then, of course, Crossett and Warren out of Southeast Arkansas returns a lot of firepower for next year. So a lot of the same teams. We'll see who kind of sneaks up in the offseason, and I know we'll be kind of reporting on that as we go along.
And before we head down to Class 3A, I want to remind everybody about our friends at Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, because a properly graded infield is not only important for player safety, but also the field's health. And no company in the state can match the exceptional service and dedication like our friends at Athletic Field Service of Arkansas in Sherwood. From infield renovation, lip removal and edging, mound rehab, laser leveling, and much more, Jeremy Rice and his crew have you covered. Call Jeremy at 501-416-1218. That's 501-416-1218 today for your free evaluation and consultation, or you can check them out on Facebook or see what else they have to offer online by searching Athletic Field Service of Arkansas. Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, we got the dirt on your infield. You just mentioned Central Arkansas Christian will be moving up to Class 4A. They made it to the state finals under interim coach Hayden Cruz, but fell to the red-hot Gosnell Pirates that were red-hot throughout the season, hit a little bit of a snag around district and regionals, but rebounded to take care of business in the state tournament. Congratulations to Coach Coots and co. who took home their first state title since I was born in 1990.
Absolutely. And, what a run by Coach Coots. Look who they beat. They beat Haskell Harmony Grove, who won the 2019 state title. Tied for the 7-3A conference championship, finished runner-up in their regional to Genoa Central, beat Harding Academy 9-6 in the quarterfinal round, which was huge. They slayed the Dragon. So the Pirates, they kept rolling along, beat Rivercrest, conference rival, 10-3, who they beat in the regular season. They lost to them in the district tournament in the championship game 3-2. So Gosnell coming in as a 3 seed, I believe, we thought they were going to be good. Trent Middleton had been nails all season, 131 strikeouts, over 70 innings pitched. I think he had the most innings pitched of any pitcher in the state this season. They relied on him a lot. He threw in relief, started just about every big game they needed. He started, I think, 11 games on the season and pitched in 3 or 4 others. So they turned to him in the state championship game, of course. The righty, he came in, only gave up 1 hit, but he walked 7, struck out 5. But he was 3 for 3 at the plate. Connor Whitehead was huge, had 3 hits on the day. I think he had 3 or 4 RBIs. Let's see right here. I got it all pulled up for us. Connor Whitehead, there he is. Yeah, big game for him. And I just love the way he plays the game. He was out there, high energy all the game. It was funny because when the pitcher comes off the mound, they give him a cowboy hat for Middleton. So that was really big. And then Wrinkles came in to finish it out. But, yeah, Connor Whitehead, 3 RBIs. He had a 2-out, 2-run double in the second inning that made it 4-0. Now, they got up 5-0 before CAC even got on the board. Caleb Cook didn't have his best day. He came into the game 9-0 on the season. really low ERA, like sub 2, sub 1. It's something crazy. But the defense had been really good all year. If you had to tell me a team was going to make 4 errors in a game, I would think it would have been Gosnell. Nothing against the Pirates, but that's how and when they lost, they played really bad baseball. But Pirates did a great job getting the ball in play. CAC made 4 errors on the day, and the first 5 runs were unearned by Gosnell. So they got out to a 5-0 lead. CAC kind of chipped back. They got the bases loaded a couple times, got it to 5-2. And then the final ended up being 6-2. Look, Grayson Wilson came in, pitched well for the last 3 2/3 innings, I think. The first 2 innings was 29 pitches, 20 strikes. So the Razorback football commit. Last game is a Mustang. That's unfortunate. Had a chance to win it. But, yeah, kudos to the Pirates. Aaron Coots will be up there with Matt Wiggin and Isaac Delaney when you think of candidates for Coach of the Year for AR Preps, or even ours at Natural State Sports. But Aaron Coots done a great job. Came to Gosnell. It's a funny story. He not a coach by trade, but athlete during high school. 2010 won a basketball state title at Jonesboro Westside. Decided he wanted to get into baseball, get into coaching, give back to the game. Came back, got the assistant job at Gosnell, and then was promoted to head coach. And the Pirates are moving up to 4A next year. So they're another team that'll get in that 4A mix to even make it even tougher. But I expect the Pirates, who have been in 4A before, to compete again next year. They'll be really tough in that conference with Brooklyn, who they played twice this year. They split with them. So a lot of fun. Looking forward to Gosnell next season.
Yeah, definitely. I think Coach Coots is actually he's the offensive line coach for the football team, if I'm not mistaken. I know he coaches football as well. So
yeah, defensive line. Yep.
Yeah, or I was thinking it was O-line. Okay, but yeah, definitely a Swiss Army knife there. So, well, now down in Class 2A, we were wondering. So, throughout the whole season, when we were talking about the lower classes, Taylor 1A, Woodlawn 2A, and of course Harding Academy in 3A. As you said, the Dragon was slayed by Gosnell in the state tournament in 3A. Then we go down to 2A, and Woodlawn made another state finals appearance. Tommy Richardson just continuing to add to that legacy. But Ouachita got him this time around, 2-1. It was a really good game. I was watching that in the softball press box. But, Kevin, Ouachita was a really good team there in 1A for a while, bump up last season. And now I guess you could say, anybody that beats Woodlawn pretty much is a upset, but this is definitely a good Ouachita team that came in. Certainly don't want to take anything away from them.
Yeah, well, this surprised a lot of people. It didn't surprise Ouachita. It didn't surprise Hayden Thornton. This game was Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock. It was scheduled to be the last game of the baseball weekend of champions. Of course, we had the Maumelle Valley View game that was delayed. But up until that point, this was the best game played all weekend in Class 2A. It was well pitched, timely hitting, great defense, and there weren't a lot of free passes, not many walks, not many hit by pitches, no errors. I mean, very clean baseball game. So Peyton Wells for Woodlawn pitched one heck of a game, went 5 2/3 innings, gave up a couple of runs, but it was Ouachita's Trey Cox that just stifled that Woodlawn offense the entire day. Complete game, only allowed 2 hits. Think about that, Kyle. 2 hits against that Woodlawn lineup. Now, you say, well, was Woodlawn not hitting the ball? Woodlawn was hitting the ball. Garrett Weatherford, bless his heart, lefty, hit 2 missiles to right field that Tyler Abernathy caught diving catches both times. They were SportsCenter top 10 highlights. Braden Jones led off the top of the 6th inning. The Woodlawn shortstop, UAM signee, senior, hits the best ball of the weekend to left field, hits it all of 325 feet. And Austin out there in left field catches it as he's running to the fence over his right shoulder, looking back like this, slams into the wall. Now, there's going to be some viewers and some listeners out there saying, Kevin, he dropped the ball. He did drop the ball, okay? The umpire ruled that he made a catch. When the ball came out, you really can't see it on replay. There is no replay in high school baseball. Coach Richardson did not come out and contest it, so it's an out. It was a catch. And that really just deflated Woodlawn at that point. The big hit was given by my man Judd Smith, the lefty first baseman who played well at first. Had a single in the 6th inning, and that was it, 2-1. So a great played game. Hayden Thornton, who had been close as an assistant coach in 2018 as an assistant at Conway Christian, they came in 25-1 on the year. Lost in the second round to Spring Hill, who ended up being the state runner-up that year. And he had been a head coach at Fountain Lake, came over to Ouachita after Anthony Nail left to go to Sheridan. And he's been head coach at Ouachita for 2 years. They've been in 2A for 2 years. They went 10-2 in the conference, finished as the number 3 seed, beat Greenland in the first round of the state tournament, beat them 6-0. Nothing shows me that these guys won't compete and be back on a year-to-year basis. Look, they went 20-11 on the year, or 21-11 on the year now. 10-2 in conference play. Like I said, their 2 losses earlier in the season were by 3 runs, 4 runs to Woodlawn. In the second game, they were up 6-5 and going into the 6th inning. So they expected to be there. They only hit 4 home runs on the year as a team playing on a 270-foot fence. If you put some of these teams on 270-foot fences, they're going to hit 70 home runs. This team is just scrappy. They played hard. They played well. And kudos, man. It was a lot of fun watching that game, calling that game with Kyle Deckelbaum. So congratulations to the Warriors. And now what does Class 2A look like moving forward, Kyle? Woodlawn is going to be back. Ouachita is going to be back. Horatio made the semifinals. I think Cedar Ridge will be back next year. And then
let me ask you about Rector. I'll interrupt you real quick because I'm going to take a guess. Out of the final 4 teams, I'm going to say Rector probably has the most to replace because just Drew Henderson and Cooper Rabjohn alone are the first 2 that come to mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you lose those guys, you're losing the heart of your team. You're losing the core. You're losing your best pitcher, your catcher. Rabjohn over 300 strikeouts in his career. I think he won 30 games over the course of 4 years. So, yeah, it's going to be tough replacing those guys. Riverside, the Rebels, they lost to Woodlawn 1-0 in the quarterfinals. They could have been in the finals had they won in the semifinals of their regional against Palestine Wheatley. Palestine Wheatley will be back next year. So a lot of the teams that were in our Super 7 poll plus Ouachita will have a chance to be back next year. Bigelow loses Carter Alexander, Rhett Newmeyer, but they had a lot of really good young talent this year. Craig Newmeyer said he was really proud of those freshmen and sophomores that really stepped up. So I could see Bigelow making a run. Think of Southside B Branch. McCrory is going to be back next year. Will Rushing will be back. Their top 2 arms are back. And then B Branch will be back next year. So a lot of good competition in Class 2A next year.
And last but not least, in Class 1A, it's a Taylor party yet again. That dynasty lives on in both baseball and softball, but baseball did something that they've never done, and that is three-peat. They had won back-to-back championships 3 previous times before, and then they got the three-peat with, what was it, a 10-2? Yeah, 10-2. 10-2 win over Westside Greers Ferry. So congratulations to the Taylor Tigers. Probably, if they haven't already, they're going to have to get a little bit more room on that board coming into town that they have all the state champions on. And I would imagine the Lindsay family is probably going to have to add another room to their house for all those trophies.
Yeah, that's a lot of trophies, a lot of rings. Mason Lindsay, of course, catcher. His sister caught for the Lady Tigers, who won their 7th straight, which hasn't been done baseball, softball, any classification in the state of Arkansas ever. So from a baseball guy, congratulations to the Taylor Lady Tigers on an outstanding season and all the state champions in softball this year. But, yeah, Taylor did it in dominating fashion. This was the game that was out of hand. I mean, it was 10-2. Waylon Waddell looked good on the mound, 5 strong innings. And I was, talking to Coach Fowler, he had some good quotes after the game. He was like, look, yeah, this is a three-peat, but this is their title. This is this group in 2024. This is their title. They get to hang on to that for the rest of their lives. They get to be the one that won the 8th title in school history, and that they get to carry on that. Look, 04-05, they missed out in 06, and then they missed out in 2010 after winning it in 08-09. They've been number 1 for 2 straight years now, Kyle. Then there's a reason, because these guys go out and play hard. Waylon Waddell didn't pitch a whole lot last year. They lost Preston and Peyton Smith to SAU They knew they had to replace a lot of firepower on offense. They knew they had to replace a lot of pitching on the mound. But they had Mason Lindsay, they had Waylon Waddell, and they had Austin Aycock. For anybody that's ever heard me talk about baseball, especially on this podcast, radio, TV, anywhere, if you're strong up the middle, you're going to have a chance. Austin Aycock was a center fielder, got MVP of the state tournament, went 2 for 3 in the finals with an RBI, and played outstanding defense. Mason Lindsay did a great job behind the plate. Waddell was on the mound. He also had a couple of hits. So Taylor wins 10-2. Look, Westside's going to be back. Dude, Brooks Hip at the top of that lineup, Keegan Towle in the 2-hole. Hip led off the game with a double. I mean, he's good. Sophomore had another hit during the game. Love the way they swing it. They just didn't have it. Jacob Carlton didn't have his best stuff. And he came into the game hitting over 400, 500, hitting over 500. 10-1 on the year, just did not have his best stuff. And you're against a team that had been to the state championship game in their 3rd consecutive year. So this was huge for Westside to punch through, make that next step. They're still looking for their first state title, but I think they'll be back. This team was good. Went 27-4 on the year, I believe, and they just ran into Taylor, who is the king of Class 1A right now. And until somebody knocks them off, they're still going to be there next year.
I think that softball is probably going to be the same, even though that 24 class is massive. I like what Coach Fowler said there about this is their title because, see, that 2024 class for softball, that was their 4th that they were the only class in school history. Out of all those state championship teams, they're the only class in school history they're going to graduate with 4 rings. But that's kind of in a way what Coach Courtney McHenry had said, like each year is obviously different. And I think at this point for both baseball and softball, people just expect them to show up and they're just going to win and they're going to get to state again. And that's something that's definitely a myth. I mean, look at the first round of the state tournament? Taylor was down 6-0 and then they rolled off 17 straight runs. So, yeah, and I mean, they're the best team, but that doesn't mean they're just going to show up and win.
Yeah, and they do it every year. They got out there. Bradford got on them real quick. Jesse Humphreys, I left him out, and I apologize, had a phenomenal state tournament. He had 2 home runs, 6 RBIs in that win over Bradford in the first round, 17-6. He came back and had 3 other RBIs. He had 10 or 11 in the state tournament after adding 1 or 2 in the state title game. So this team they keep putting pressure on you every pitch. And I know that's one of the things that was overwhelming factor this weekend with all these state championship teams is they put pressure on you at every point during the game. They build the culture. Look, it's not a coincidence that these teams keep getting back here year after year. Valley View was in the title game the last 4 years. They won it this year, lost it last year. Harbor, 2nd straight title. They've been in the mix every year. Prairie Grove and Robinson were new, but they weren't new to success. Robinson had been state tournament every year since 2019. Prairie Grove had been right there as well. Gosnell had been good, but this year they just took that next step. And Ouachita's had a good program, Woodlawn. These teams that win it year in and year out, and they're like, I know a lot of people think we're giving favoritism to these teams, but it's not favoritism. It's honest, objective opinion based on how they play the game. The game has changed so much. Everything is available as far as analytics, statistics, video. There's so much out there that it kind of overloads your senses at some time to where they're constantly talking about the same team. The same teams always win. There's the thought process out there to where, back when we were growing up, Kyle, we were like, that coach is playing favorites. Well, probably so. The coach plays favorites because he favors kids that are going to work hard, do what the coaches ask, and they're low maintenance. So it's kind of the same thing with teams as we're looking at them, okay? If they go out and do all the right things, they're going to win ball games. The more you win, the more you get talked about. Just think of Norfolk over the last 3 seasons, Kyle. This is a great example. Norfolk hadn't done anything. They've been a basketball school. And 3 years ago, they won 20 games. They got to the state tournament. We named them the Party Crashers because they just showed up out of nowhere and started beating teams, beating Viola, competing in that 2-1A up there, which is a very tough conference to break through. And they went this year. They won the state tournament game, they just ran into Taylor in the second round. So those kids build a foundation for Ethan Davis and his staff to keep doing that over the next few years. Dynasties can be created at any time. That's the thing about this. The first 13 years that Tommy Richardson was at Woodlawn, they didn't make a state championship. How many coaches out there now would actually stay with it, or would they move on to greener pastures? This was his 31st year at Woodlawn, and he keeps going back and doing it every year because he loves the kids. He cares about them. He's going to lose 4 seniors. They're like losing family to him. And that was one of the things that he told us this weekend. Look, every time I lose a senior, it's like losing a part of the family, but we just keep going back and figure out how to win the next one. And that's what all these 6 state championships teams have to do this year, figure out how to do it again.
And that is a wrap of the 2024 state championship games. I want to remind everybody, if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe if you have not already, because we got some more things in the pipeline. We'll probably have it announced on the softball episode because we haven't had everything completely confirmed, but we know kind of what we're going to be doing this summer. So definitely stay tuned to our social medias for those, because we're going to keep doing this every single week. So for those announcements, definitely make sure you follow Natural State Sports on Twitter, X, whatever, and then also on Facebook. But Kevin, I guess this week we got our final rankings out. Of course, we put out our top performers from the state finals, and then also kind of a quick recap in that same story. But crazy that we're wrapping up year 3 of the coverage that we've done this together.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I consider you one of my best friends, and we've gotten to work together, spend a lot of time together, covering sports. Which if any of these guys that have been doing this a long time, it's always awesome to do things like this with people who have the goals in mind of promoting kids, and that's one thing that. This weekend, and we all deal with stuff that on the outside, we all have families and deal with, my wife and my daughter have been sick for the better part of a week, and I have to go to Conway, do that, come back and everything. So it's always awesome having a team like we have that can support you, pick you up, help out to get these kids promoted and have a spotlight on them. That was the goal 6 years ago when I started this. And now we're getting to do it at an even higher level. Like Kyle mentioned, we're going to have some more stuff for baseball. We're going to have some former high school superstars that we'll get to talk to and have on the podcast and see how their college careers have turned out. A lot of them, you people, our fans out there, listeners, have heard of. And you've seen me talk about them in social media. Some of them will be guys that I've coached. Some of them won't be. But that's the thing. We build relationships with these guys to get to tell their story at the end of the day, and take this thing to the next level, because we've got a lot to do. That we're still young. Kyle's a lot younger than I am, but we're excited to really take this thing to the next level and get out there. And I can't believe it's already over, but I'm excited about the draft. Seeing Slade Caldwell be the first round pick. Potential. The latest mock draft for Baseball America, he was 28th to the Diamondbacks. That's not a coincidence. They drafted Corbin Carroll that high. So we'll have some stuff out on that. I'm going to get to go up there, spend some time with him, and get to go through the experience of seeing somebody picked in the first round, which will be new for me because I haven't ever been a part of that.
Yeah, for sure. That's going to be really cool because it was 95 the last time it happened?
Yeah. Tony McKnight went 22nd to the Astros in 95.
95 almost 30 years.
95, Torrey went 20th overall. And then Hugh Walker went to the Royals in 1987, 88, I believe. Went 18th overall. Caldwell has the ability to go that high. Willie, I think his ceiling is 15 and then all the way down to 30. So anywhere in the back half of the second round.
Good deal. Well, before we hop off here, speaking of, you talked about promoting the kids, and I'm going to read. Well, it's not. I'm not going to read it because it won't really make sense on here. But so I'll just kind of tell what it's about. But I was going to mention this on softball because it was actually softball related. But I won't say the name of the school. But I have a friend who teaches at this particular school, And I have a very distinct voice for those that don't realize it. And she overheard, I hadn't talked to her in a few years, but she overheard some kids listening to the podcast, the softball one. And I guess it was some of the softball players or whatever. And at first they were kind of scared. They heard their school name and they were a little bit like, oh, are they going to say some mean things about us or whatever? Well, they get to listening. And obviously I didn't say any mean things. I was saying uplifting things. And they told her that, basically it made them very happy to hear their names heard, to hear their school being talked about, how well they did in the state tournament. So I narrowed a few teams down there. It was a state tournament team. But to hear that kind of stuff, that's the reason why we do this. I mean, I think I can probably speak for Kevin too. Other than hearing maybe that we're a great father, that's probably the best compliment that you can receive. It's up there with it. So, Kevin, by your reaction, I'm guessing that you just read the breaking news about Grayson Wilson. Yeah. So during this episode, we get the breaking news that Grayson Wilson is heading to Conway. Dun, 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 dun. That's kind of why I've been a little bit speechless in the last 5 minutes, because this is something that's honestly not super surprising.
Again.
Yeah. So, it's definitely pretty wild. So that's the climate we're in. We got people switching schools. It is what it is. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's not going to be the end either. There's all kinds of moving around, but I think the world of Grayson Wilson. I know him well. I've done many stories over him. I certainly think he's going to thrive there, and that's what I got to say about it.
Yeah, that it'll be exciting next year. Them in Fayetteville. I know we're going to be off for a little bit, but we're going to be talking a lot about it. That's going to be a lot of fun this fall. Yeah, for sure. So make sure you're subscribed to Arkansas Preps Weekly, because it's not going to stop just because the summer's here. We're going to keep doing this. It's not called Preps Weekly for nothing. I mean, we're going to do it weekly. Now, occasionally there might be a case where we don't get an episode out, but for the most part, I'm going to the beach.
Yeah, you're going to go to the beach. I'm not going to the beach this year, so I'll take care of it that week. But other than that, that will do it for episode, I think this is 13 of Arkansas Preps Weekly. Again, YouTube, make sure you're subscribed, and then make sure you're subscribed also on the audio versions, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen. But other than that, for Kevin Bohannon and all of us here at Natural State Sports, my name's Kyle Sutherland. We will catch you next week.